Okay, so I got this list of 1.29 million titles from the British Library, and many thanks to them for this data set. And I can type in on my form that I created summer and rain, and as you can see I type in the search terms and the number found decreases as I type more in, as the titles, there are less and less titles. And you can see here there's our summer and rain, 1910 George Schaefer, and there's some other ones here, you know, with summer and rain in the titles, 1935 Dennis Wayne, and some others. And that is our search, and that's what we're doing today. I'm your host, Sean MacKenzie. Thanks for joining me once again on my channel on data engineering. In this episode, we go back to our Microsoft Access playlist, and we're going to take a look at how to do a multi-term search on a single field so that we can rapidly narrow our results. And additionally, we're going to create a report based on our findings, which will be very, very handy for us to work with. So without further ado, let's get to it. Okay guys, so like I said, I got the title list from the British Library, and I'm going to look at this title list that I got. I imported into Microsoft Access, and it has all these fields in it, the title field and then a whole bunch of other fields that we have looked at in one of our other videos. But today we're going to focus on this title field here because we want to be able to put some search terms in to get any title that has our search terms in it. And so just as I showed before, if it has summer in the title and it has rain in the title, then I want all the results of that. And if if it has rock in it and roll in it, I want that list or whatever. And you can see many of these are pretty old, so there's lots of different titles in there. There's 1.29 million records in this table, and it's a good fun table to test out your SQL skills on. And today we're going to build a multi-term search form, a very simple one. I'm not going to use the word keywords here because keywords indicates that there will be actual word matches, whereas in this case we're just doing we're going to do a like comparison, which for most intents and purposes, for 99% of you guys out there, this is going to work great. We will do another video that is specific to keywords, and that'll be a good video as well. But in this case, we're going to look for any search terms that match. So even if if the search term is part of another word, it's still going to show. But as you can see, for people who are just looking to rapidly look up data, this is a very, very fast way to narrow down rows to be searched. And so what I'm going to do is I created a blank form and design view here using the create ribbon, and then I just put a text control onto the form. And as you can see, if I look at the properties for that text control, it says text 0 under the name on the other tab, and I'm going to change that to txt search 1, and that's going to give me a starting point. That's going to be my first search term, and then I'm going to copy that. I'll right click, copy that text box, and then I'll right click on it again and I'll paste on there so that it pastes it right below. And I'll do the same. I guess I'll do 5 search terms in here. That should narrow our list very rapidly. You can go up to 10 or 20, or you can do as many search terms as you want, because the way that I'm going to show you how to do this today is not dependent on the number of text boxes. All you have to do is change a few parameters, and you could do 10 or 20 if you wanted, but I think 5 is probably fine for today. So I'm going to name each of these. As you can see, I'm going down through each of these text boxes, and I'm just naming it txt search you search 4 in that case, and then txt search 5 will be the last one. And you'll note that there's kind of a pattern to how I'm naming the controls, and that's going to be important later as I show you guys how to code this. And so there we go. I've put my 5 controls on there. I'm going to do a Control S here to save the form, and I'll just call it search form. And this file will be available for download on my downloads page if you want to play around with it. And so make sure to check out the additional links in the description down below where you can find this file. So there we go. I created 5 text boxes for search terms, and I'm going to go back to my controls. And what I did was I grabbed a button from the controls in the toolbox and I put it on the form, and in my case the wizard popped up, and you can just click cancel on that wizard pop-up because we're going to custom code this button here. And I'm going to go to the properties for the button, and I'm going to call it CMD report. And so that command button is now called CMD report, and that's going to launch a report when it is clicked, or you can go Alt R, since I used the ampersand in front of the R there. That gives the underline on the R on the button, and it allows you to use your Alt keys to do a shortcut. So then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go and I'm going to click on the on-click event there, and I'm going to go to the code builder, and this is going to give us a shortcut into our VB editor here. And now this is the report click event which it's created, so anything that we do in this event is going to happen when the button is clicked. And we're going to save that for now, because before we program that button, we're going to add our own function and our own subroutine into the code behind of this form here, and that's going to help us to do some code reuse, which is a very good method. Now, as you see here, I've created a function called filter where, and that's because we want to have a filter string for a few different purposes that we're going to reuse in several places, and we want to have a filter string that's going to capture all of the terms that we want to search our data by. And so in order to do that, we're going to create this function, and it has no arguments, meaning that we don't have to put anything into it. We're just going to ask the filter where function what's happening right at the moment that it's needed, and the function is going to evaluate the form at that moment in time to see what's going on. And it's going to say, okay, right now this is what the filter string is for what we want to use. So I've created a variable called strWhere, and you can see at the bottom of our function I've set the value of filter where equal to strWhere, and that means that that's what the function is going to return whenever we ask for it. So we can ask any time. After we filled one box, we can ask, what's the status, what's the current status of the where function, or of the where string, or after we filled 2 or 3, it doesn't really matter. And this allows us to create a function that's reusable, and it's going to be very, very handy for us because we're going to reuse it in many places here. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to use a loop, and we're going to go for int search equals 1 to 5, and that's for each of those text boxes that you see there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you can see, if you remember, we created the name of our text box as txt search 1, txt search 2, etc., and that allows us to use the naming of the text boxes as part of our solution. So if you have 10 text boxes that you want to search by, you can just say for 1 to 10, for int search equals 1 to 10. Or if you have 20, you can go for equals 1 to 20, although that's going to slow it down a lot. And you'll see that the search narrows very rapidly as you enter terms. And so now what we've done is we've got our int search variable, that's going to go from 1 to 5, and then we've got a txt as text box variable, and that's going to allow us to say we're going to look at this text box, then the next text box. And so what we're going to do in our for next loop is we're going to say we're going to set that txt equal to me, which is the form, because we're working in the form code behind, and so it's going to be equal to txt search and then the number of the search, and that makes the name of the text box that we want to evaluate, and then we can go and get the value from that text box. So we can say after that, now we've got the txt variable has been assigned with the reference to the text box, and so we can say if the length of the value in there, now I use the double quotes in txt so that will, if there's a null in there, it'll evaluate to an empty string which can have a length of greater or less than 0. So in this case what I'll do is I'll go if the length of the text box, that means if there's an entry in the text box, then do this stuff, and then inside of that we're going to go, okay, now we know it has an entry. If the length of the string that we're building, this where string that we're going to put in our filter property of our report, and also when we look up how many records we're finding, what we're going to do is we're going to put an and in there, and so it says if the length of str where is greater than 0, then we're going to put an and in there before we add the next search term and then the next search term, etc., etc. But when it's on the first search term, it doesn't put the and on because it's the very first one. And so now I'm just going to go and confirm the name of the field. I didn't quite catch it there, so I'm going to go back to our title table, and actually it's the name of the field is also title, as you can see, so that makes it very easy. So what we're going to do is we're going to say each time that there's an entry in each one of the text boxes, the search text boxes, we're going to say that the title, we're going to look for the title is like, and then we're going to put a character 34 there. And the character 34 is very important because we want to be able to capture when we have an apostrophe in there. But we're going to go character 34, and then we're going to concatenate the star in there so that we have a star around our text, the selection that's in our text box, and then we're going to do a star and then the double quote again, and that creates our search string. And now if I go into the immediate window there, which is available as Control-G usually, but we have it open because we're coding, you can see if I ask for what the value of character 34 is, it gives me a double quote, and that's exactly what we want to see. So we're already using double quotes in this string, but that's to create our string, but we actually need to stick double quotes into our string, because if we use single quotes, then that'll get messed up every time there's an O'Connor or something like that that has an apostrophe in it. It's going to screw up our search. So if I minimize that one, I can go and take a look now, and what I want to do now is I'm going to go to the controls and I'm going to grab another text box, because I want to see each time I put a search term in, I want to see, well, how many records did I capture with my search terms, because I don't want to print my report that we're going to build. I don't want to print a report with 1 million records on it. It's going to be massive, and of course that's not going to be great for printing or for the environment or anything, because you're going to print all that paper. So what we want to do is we're going to put a found text box here, and I'm going to just center those so they look a little nicer. There we go. And I'm just going to pull that down to the right side here, and so this is going to let us know every time we put in a search term, it's going to tell us how many records are in, that we captured or returned. And so I'm going to call that text box txt found, and that's going to help us. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our code now, because we created our filter where function, and the function returns where. So there's our filter where that we just created, and that's going to return the where clause or where phrase that we're going to use in our report filter and some other filters, as you're going to see here. But now what we're going to do is we're going to say we're going to create a subroutine that's going to set that refresh that count box for the records that we're looking at. So that's the first place that we're going to use our where string, and it's going to be a very simple function. It's just going to set the number of sort of records returned. Well, I can type here some records found, and it's going to set that number so that we know what's going on each time that we put in a search term to narrow our search. And next, what we're going to do is we're going to create our variables in our set found subroutine here. Now, a subroutine is just code that executes and does not return any value like the function does. The subroutine just runs, and whatever it does in the subroutine, it just does some actions and then it's done. So we're just going to create an str_where variable again, but this time we're just going to set that str_where equal to our filter where, because the filter where, depending on whenever it's called, it's going to look at those text boxes and it's going to say here's what the current search term is, and so we don't need to code anything. So all we have to do now is we can just say, we can use the dcount function, which is the domain count, and we can just set me txt found equal to dcount, and we'll count the titles in the dcount search, and that's in the titles table, which is the table that you saw there before. So that's the titles table, and then the criteria will just be str_where, and very simple. So we can plug in that str_where, which will get evaluated whenever this is called, and it'll get the count of the records and just set the value of that txt found control. And that's really it for the set found function, because we created that reusable function, the filter where. We don't actually need to build that string anymore. We can just take that set found. I'll copy that, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look in our under general here. You'll see this is where we can choose our text boxes when we do not go through the form interface, and the default event that we get is before update, but the one that we want, we got to get from the right hand side drop down, and we want the after update event, and we're just going to paste in the set found function in the after update. So you can see I grabbed txt search 2, and then I changed it to after update, and then I can paste in set found just like we did for the first one. Then we go to txt search 3, we can grab the after update event, just paste in the name of our function so we don't have to write any extra code there, and we'll do the same for 4, and we'll switch to after update, and then we can go to txt search 5 and do the same thing, and we'll grab that after update event and paste in set found. So now it's any time that we type anything into those text boxes and tab off of it or hit enter, it's going to run the set found function and change, it'll look for the count of records that match, and that's exactly what we want. So you can see these auto-generated functions are here. You can just delete those. They don't have anything in them. We could have gone through the form interface and just chosen the after update event. That's another way that you can do it, but we'll just delete these here. Those were just auto-generated, those empty functions there. And this shows you that you can delete whenever you have an empty subroutine. You can just delete the subroutine there. And so now we've got our 5 after update events for each of the text boxes. So anytime that we update our search term, it's going to go and find the count of records for the current situation or context as you might have it. And so now we've finished our first set of coding. We've got our where clause and everything. This is our report click we're gonna use to open our report, but we don't have a report yet. But we can actually try out our functions that we assigned, or our subroutines that we assigned to the form events, control events. And so we can go ahead now. You can see we've got our form, and we can just go ahead and try that out. So let's just go and we'll click on our form view, and that's going to load up our form here, and we can test this out and see if we get any errors. And I've just used form view there. So this is our form with our search terms on it, and we can just go ahead and try this out by typing in, I don't know, music. This is a music list after all, so if I type in music and tab to the next control, you can see it reduces that, or it shows us that we have 57,386 with music in the title. And if I type in autumn for the second one, let's see what we get. Oh, that brings it down to 67. And then if I put in the in there, we'll see how many we get with those 3, and that brings it down to 27. So there you go. We can see that it looks like our count is working correctly, and I can back out of this by just erasing the selections that I had in there, and it's going to recalculate each time. So we're actually going to create a clear button as well, and the clear button will that'll clear all of these for us so that we don't have to wait each time. So now I've cleared it back up to music, which had 57,000, and now I'll clear music itself, and you'll see there's the total count, which is 1.29 million records that are in there. And so here we go. So now we need a report to go with our report click event, so that we can open a report and show everybody, or we can print it, or we can do whatever. So we'll go ahead and we'll use the create ribbon, and I'm just going to use the report wizard here. And the report wizard will be very simple. We'll just create a simple report. Let's see, I'll grab title off of there. That's a good one. And I'll grab the date, I guess, of the item or the title, and then I'll choose the composer and I'll put that in there. And so now we've got title, publication date, and composer, and I'll just click next. So you can imagine this is your report that you have for whatever your issue is that you're working on, and I'll just use the defaults for the rest of the report here, except for the title. I'll change that to filtered report. How does that sound? Okay, so now we've got a filtered report. I'm not going to choose the preview because that's going to go and grab 1.2 million records that I do not want to have in my report. But I'll change that to modify, and you can sort of see what this simple report will look like when it's done. You can see we've got our title and our publication date and composer, and we will be using this report with our new CMD report, and the CMD report click function that will open it, and we're going to throw in our where clause as well. We'll be using our where clause as we open the report. So now we've used that function many times. This is a good lesson in reusability, and so we will go back to design view, and we're going to look at that. I'm going to go back into the code through the form buttons there, and we can go. It'll take us to our report click event that we created before, and now we're actually going to fill it in because we have a report to open. So now we can go, we'll dimster where as our string, and we'll set that once again using our filter where, because whatever the context is, the filter where string is going to get that for us. And then we simply need to do a do command open report. We'll specify the name of the report, which is filtered report, and we'll choose a preview. We're going to skip the filter, and we're going to set the where condition on open of the report. And so that's going to give us that initial filtering using the where condition, and we can just throw our where string in there that we built, and that's going to open the report filtered already by the values that we want. So now I can go, and I'll go back to home, and I'll click on the form view for our form, and now you can see there's it still has the 1.29 million from when we were using it before, but now I can type in, I don't know, I'll type in New York. I don't know what will be good search terms here, but I imagine there are many songs with New York. Yes, there are 668 with New York in it. And I'll type in man, and I'll type in, let's see here, that's got 27 in it, and I'll hit report. And that should give me 27 records with man and New York in it. Let's see, so there we go, there's a bunch with New York in it, and you can see our report is filtered by New York and man. But you can see, however, that first row has mandolin in it because we're using a simple like clause in our where statement, and it's not really a keyword search, but it will find those search terms, which makes it very, very handy. But you should be aware that some short strings like you know, the or you know, might not search the way that you think. So be aware of that. So I'll back out again here. I'll put in, I don't know, lightning, and let's see how many have lightning. There's 49 records in that 1.29 million with lightning in it, and I'll put Ride in there and see if I can find Ride the Lightning by Metallica, and let's see if they have it in their library data set here. So I hit report. It said it found one, and it is Ride the Lightning Songbook. Oh, interesting. We'll authorize. It doesn't have the full description because I don't have can grow set there, but we'll set that later. So that is the search that we did for Ride the Lightning. So we'll get rid of those search terms. That's going to give us back the total 1.29 million. And what we're going to do next is we're going to create that clear button. And so I'll go back to the design view of our form here, and I'm going to go to our controls, and I'm going to choose a button once again, and I'll drop that on the form here, and I'll cancel the wizard there, and we're going to we'll call this button clear, and we can use an Alt-C to execute or to trigger it by putting an ampersand at the very beginning of it there. So I've got a button called clear, and we're going to change the name of that button to CMD clear, and that's going to give us a clear button. So what we'll do is the same thing. We'll go to the ellipsis beside the click event, and we'll use the code builder, and that's going to give us CMD clear underscore click. and then that's going to clear the form. So again, very simple. We'll create our int search as integer. That's our int search variable, and we'll say for int search equals 1 to 5. And just like we did before, we're going to cycle through those controls, the text box controls, and we're going to say me txt search and int search is equal to null. Now this time we do not set it to a txt variable. This time we're just clearing out the variable, and we don't need any values or anything. We're just setting everything to null. So that's going to clear out those 5 text boxes, and I'm going to scroll down and grab our set found, because when we clear the text boxes, I want to set the count as well. So now we're reusing the set count function yet again after we've cleared out all the text boxes. So that's going to clear it out, and it's going to give us that 1.29 million, or whatever the count is in your table, and it's going to put that in there. So now if I put in some search terms here, and I go man, and that will give us 55,000. And if I put in woman, although I guess woman will have man in it, because those two are very similar. Put love in there. If we put man, woman, and love, we've got 147. And if I hit the report, you can see that the report will have a couple of pages there, and you can see the woman's love, all these other kinds of love and women and men records. And when I hit clear, you can see now it's much faster. It just clears out all those text boxes, and it gives us our count again of how many what the total of all of the records is, which is 1.29 million. And you could put in some other search terms like car and ride, and let's see what we get for that. That only has 41 in it. And we could hit report. So now that we've narrowed it down, the report will be very manageable. Only 2 pages maybe, or 1 page. And so you can see car is part of caravan, so that's something that you have to be aware of. Again, car for name. So but we can definitely find some that have car in it and have the word ride in it as well. And so that's very, very handy. And again, I can click clear, and that'll clear our form. And I'll go back to the design view of our form, and we've pretty much got most of what we want, but I'm going to click on the gray area, and that's going to highlight the form properties. And what we're going to do here is we're going to get that count to update when we first open the form too, so that we know exactly what we're working with when we first open the form. So we'll use the onLoad event, and we'll double click on the code builder, and that's going to give us that form load event, and we're just going to put the set found function in there as well. And as you can see, that is reusing that little function over and over and over again all throughout our code. So if we ever need to change how that works, we only need to change it in one place, which is really great. So I'll go and close my form, and I'm going to open it fresh, because that's going to release any test data that was in there when we were going from design to form view. But when we open it fresh like that, that's going to be all null. But you can see on the form load event, it ran that function, and it got our found count of 1.29 million. And then I can type in London, and I'll get 2300 records, or 2386. And if I put in rain, you can see there's 16 with London and rain. And there we go. We've got our report, and there's a bunch of different ones in there. Now I should expand the because I think some of these have London in the second row if I allow that field to expand. So we'll come back to that in a little bit. We'll fix that so that the second row shows. But I'll clear our report and I'll just test this with a few more criteria here. Let's put in, I don't know, rock and heaven, and that should give us a few entries there. We can check that out. Well, that came up with 6 out of 1.29 million with rock and heaven in the title. And we can look at that in our report here. So you can see there's rock and heaven in the titles there. The Stairway to Heaven and the best of, I'm guessing that's heavy metal. Then we can use our clear button, and that clears it very quickly for us, so we can try another search after that. So we could put everything, we should try out all of our boxes here. Let's try out, so we got 522 with everything, with the, let's see if we, that brings it down. There we go. We've got 142, and if I use in, and just to make sure that this is working, if we use all of the boxes here, and that's gonna bring it to 142, and if I put of in there, that will further reduce it. You'll notice it does get a little bit slower after each one. And the last search term, I guess I'll just put an A in there and just see how that works out of 38. I suppose I could have put a longer one in there. Okay, so 30, and then so there we go. So we got 30, and if I run our report, each one of those search terms will be in each of the 38 rows, and so that makes it very, very handy for narrowing down our list. And we can go back to design view here, and I'm going to set that can grow equal to true or equal to yes. So I'll scroll down. It's on the format tab of the text box, and I'll go ahead and set that to yes, and I'll save it, and I'll close it. And then now if I hit report, we should see a little bit nicer of a display in terms of reading it. There we go. That looks better. So now we've got everything stops for T, and everything, that's a popular one. Irish songs for harmonica, Scottish songs for harmonica, and a whole bunch of others. So there you go. So we've got some pages of songs there. And that is how you can do a multi-term search in Access. Looking for additional resources for your project? Make sure to check out the additional links in the description.